Welcome to Rick on Life, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. I'm your host, Rick Amitin, and this is where we talk about things that are affecting our daily lives. Today, we're going to be talking about the secrets to success with Tim Fargo. Tim is an American author, an angel investor, an entrepreneur, and he was previously CEO of Omega Insurance Services, a business that he started in 1996 and then sold in 2003 for $20 million. He's now the CEO of Social Jukebox, an automated social media posting system. Tim, thank you for being here and welcome to Rick on Life.
Rick, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Listen, before we jump in, I do want to just highlight something that I really like about you, and that is the fact that in social media, there is so much negativity and such a lack of civility that you're always out there putting out good things and adding some nice chlorine into the pool. So I want to tell you how much I really appreciate just the good vibe that you put out on a daily basis.
Well, thanks, Rick. I mean, I just find it kind of amusing, I suppose is the nicest way I can put it. Sometimes when people post on social media, I don't know if they're just venting or if they're actually trying to persuade anyone, but some of the posts just seem, I don't know how persuasive they really are.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think anytime we can share things that'll help other people advance what they want to do rather than try to get them to buy into our agenda, then that's probably a good thing. Let them try to find ways to help people do things they're already motivated to do rather than change what they're motivated to do. I think that's easier to give them gas for the journey they already want to take.
Well, you've got such a good vibe, and man, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people, of course, that connect with you, and I'm sure it's for that reason. You know, you're pointing us in a direction and you're giving us that feeling, and there's a lot of substance, of course, to what you're contributing as well. So I connect with it. I love sharing your stuff. Lots of stuff I see every day that's just good and powerful. But thanks, man. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
Listen, let's jump in here. You had some pretty what I would call defining moments in your life, in your ascent in your business and career, and so maybe we can jump in here around 1991 when you had a something difficult to face, and if you can kind of tell us what was going on, what happened, and how you moved on from that, that'd be great.
Okay, well, like in the late 80s, early 90s, I was running an event marketing business, and that business was actually doing pretty well. But the problem is, what happened is I started believing my own PR. And, you know, when you get a stick of business in the event marketing, like somebody wants you to put on an event at their shopping center, or somebody wants you to, you know, promote a particular something, that's just an invitation to go get to work. So it's getting that order is pretty distant from actually getting any money. But at the time, I'd get like oh man, this event's going to be worth 50 grand and, you know, it's going to be awesome and yada, yada, yada. And I'd go out and start enjoying myself as if this thing had already been, the event had already been completed and had been billed and the bill had been paid. And, you know, so that got me a little behind, and then a little further behind, and then a little further behind. And then ultimately, I mean, in 91, I ended up declaring bankruptcy because I just never was willing to kind of really look at this problem until it just had become so overwhelming. I mean, it was no longer, I couldn't deal with it anymore. I mean, the writing just ended up being on a wall. Like I was just, you keep telling yourself, I'm gonna get to the surface. I'm gonna get to the surface. But what the reality was, I was just sinking. And but I mean, as bad as it sounds or whatever, I mean, I'm really glad that it happened to me when I was relatively young and didn't have a family and all that, because I learned some pretty valuable lessons about, you go out and maybe enjoy your success after the check has cleared and the funds are securely in your account.
Yeah.
That's when you know the deal is over. And so, and that's really served me well, to have adopted that mindset. I mean, I learned that lesson in a very kind of protracted and painful way, but I'm a little thick-headed, so that's probably the way I needed to learn it.
Sure. Um, well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I mean, obviously you learned some valuable lessons and was able to walk away from that. So what were your steps for moving on?
Well, as soon as the bankruptcy had, the dust was settling, so to speak, I mean, I instantly got to work rebuilding my credit, and like I got a secured credit card, et cetera. But I mean, my eye was on, like, once the kind of, there was a period of time where I think I just kind of stewed in my own juices, so to speak. But as soon as I got my head screwed back on, I started just rebuilding, because you quickly realize, I mean, you're either going to let this event be the beginning of kind of the end, or you're going to let it be the beginning of something new. And so by rebuilding my credit, by taking the time to kind of, marshal my resources, start putting some money in the bank, and things like that, and reestablishing myself financially. I mean, that's what allowed me, in the 5 years between then and 96, to rebuild myself substantially enough to be able to launch Omega.
Right. How did you get into that? That was, a completely different business than you had been in.
I got into the business from, I knew some guys that had an investigative company in Alabama, and it was actually pretty funny, at least to me. I was living in South Beach, and I was working for this high-flying developer that, I mean, we owned a ton of land and buildings all over South Beach, including nightclubs where I could go for free and all this stuff. So it was a nice job. And so I'm living it like amongst the models in South Beach, and these guys are like, "You really ought to move to Birmingham." And I was like, that's hilarious. Why would I ever do that? But anyhow, so after a while, though, I took a look at the business, and it became clear to me that this was a great business in the context of, there are a lot of people that were in that business that weren't really business people. They were very good investigators, but they weren't necessarily great people, like, for building and scaling a business. And my background was business, not investigations.
Right.
So I ultimately went to work for them as like a finance and systems guy. And we got a couple years in, and let's just say we had creative differences. So after those 2 years were up, I ended up in Florida, and I thought, I helped them go from 6 people to 50 in a couple years, and I thought, I've already run that business, so I know I can do the same thing again. It's just to kind of put the component pieces together. So in 96, I mean, I cobbled together, those basic pieces, and started Omega. And we grew, I mean, super fast. I mean, we went from an extra bedroom and 0 clients, to, we had, I don't know, I think 20,000, just over 20,000 square feet of space, over 300 employees, and over 20 million in revenue, by 2003 when the business was sold. So we grew like super fast.
Well, that, I mean, that's an amazing story. Not only did you spread out across the country with it, but then to be able to actually put that out there as a company and selling it. somebody else must have thought, that's you had incredible value there that you'd built up.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I had it kind of in my head to build it to sell from the beginning. I didn't really want to be in that business, but everyone's different. Some people go into a business because they love that business, and I'm actually kind of agnostic as to like business type, because to me, businesses all have certain similarities. I mean, and some businesses are harder, more difficult. Like people love the restaurant business, and I'll never understand why. It's like super hard business.
Right.
Especially like compared to the business I'm in now, being in the software business is considerably easier. It scales faster. I mean, there are other challenges, but I'm a little more deliberate now about what I pick, because this business also, the business I'm in now, allows me to kind of be anywhere because it's all electronic. So I could be, in southern Argentina, or I could be in Alaska. And I mean, it really, to the clients, it doesn't matter, because the business is going to run the same from their perspective. It doesn't matter where I am.
Right. Well, and then you obviously decided to share some of the information that you had acquired in building these businesses, and you wrote the book, The Alphabet Success, Keeping It Simple. Talk to us about what motivated you to write the book, what you wanted to say and ultimately did say in the book, and so talk to us about what moved you in that direction.
Well, without trying to sound too egotistical, one of the things that always chapped me pretty badly is that I found a lot of business books tried to make it sound like running a business was this absolutely like complex undertaking. And I'm not saying that there aren't businesses like that. I mean, there's companies that make very complicated products like Boeing and so on. But
Right.
at its heart, the actual business side of it, I mean, there's a lot of just very fundamental things. But so many business books, I mean, they're these super thick books that just, I mean, from my perspective, it's like kind of the author's trying to, I don't know, justify the purchase price, or just go on ad nauseum about what they think they know.
Right.
There's some pretty fundamental things that if you do, you can make it. And I think most of those lessons apply to more people, because most business people in the world are small business people. And the reality is, I mean, what makes a great business person was the same in a ancient medieval market as it is today. The appreciating the needs of your customer and getting to know your customer and interacting with them and doing the things you say you're going to do. And so, I mean, Alphabet Success is a book that's really about the very fundamental things about business. And one of the things that I at least personally find kind of amusing is every now and then a friend or somebody, an acquaintance, will read it and they'll go, I like the book, but I knew a lot of that stuff. And my question is always, I know you know it, but do you do it?
Yeah. Right.
Because there's a big difference between knowing and doing. Most people know that it's good to send a thank you card, but do you do it? Do you actually take the time to write something out by hand, put a stamp on it, and put it in the mail to someone, instead of just sending them an email that just gets lost in with every other email they get every day?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the power of things that you learn from people who actually succeed. Information is everywhere. I mean, we're on information overload at this point. I mean, you can access information in the stroke of a keyboard. It's all out there. And if you are intrigued by just learning that kind of stuff, well, you can just go from one author to the next author to the next author and read and read and read and go through program after program. But unless you actually sit down to put things in play and do those things, it's just head knowledge that never really translates into reality. And so I think it's very powerful what you're saying. Okay, we know it, but what are we doing? So my question would be, do you think, and I'm talking about the average person who either has a business idea or maybe they just want to market a book, or they've got something that they want to develop, maybe they should collaborate on. Uh, how do you recommend that people who are unsure about what to do, how do you get started? You take a book like yours that outlines these steps, but how do you start moving from your just head knowledge to actual reality?
Um, okay, and I'll preface this by saying, this is just my informed opinion, but I think one of the biggest mistakes I think people make is people want to have this amazing novel new idea. And that's problem number one, because very often, and you see this, or at least I see it very often, people will come out with an app and it does something and I'm thinking, who the hell needs what they're doing? I mean, this is an idea in search of a market. And I think that there's much more to be done, like by taking an existing business, okay, because then you don't need proof of concept. But very often, all you need to do is go through a day in your life, the things that frustrate you when you walk into a particular supermarket or you're on hold with a particular company or whatever, and you're getting frustrated. Every point of frustration you experience in dealing with another business is an opportunity for somebody someday. Because there are a ton of businesses out there doing stuff, but a lot of them don't do it very well. So you can take a business that you're interested in that's already a bona fide business. And the guy who's probably the most famous for doing this is Richard Branson. Branson doesn't come up with new businesses. Branson goes into existing businesses and makes them more fun and better executed than his competition. And as a result, he takes a ton of business away from them. So my first piece of advice would be, don't necessarily try to reinvent the wheel. Just try to make a significant improvement on the wheel that already exists. And then the second piece is just try doing it. I mean, in whatever the most elemental way, fundamental way that you can, and one of the other things I see people do even in that arena is they're like, I don't want to share because I'm worried someone will steal my idea. Let me tell you, ideas are easy. It's a blast. It's so much fun to sit around and come up with ideas.
Yeah.
But what's hard, I mean, unless you just have the most magnificent idea ever known to mankind, and that's probably unlikely, but of the issue that people have, and it relates to my first point, isn't the idea, it's executing on the idea. And so if you take your idea and you put it in front of people and you go, hey, I got an idea to do this, wouldn't it be great if you could get, I don't know, mobile service for your phone or cell service for your phone, and it would be more affordable and the internet speed would be quicker, and you find something where there's clearly a button like that would resonate with people, and say, hey, if I had that, would you be interested? And if you have a really good idea, there'll probably be people that go, if you do that, I'll be your first customer. They're like ready to give you their money. If you can come up with an idea where people are like, I'm ready, then you already know you're on the right path. But if you're explaining your idea to others and you're sharing an idea to others and people are scratching their head, I mean, that to me is like an indication you need to either refine your idea or come up with a new one. But I think it's getting out there and putting yourself into the marketplace and trying and like sharing with people, and trying to, at some level, start the thing moving. Whereas, I think a lot of people sit back and they're planning and they want to have everything just perfect and they want to have a brochure and they want to have this and that. And I think there's so many more successful businesses where the person buys landing page software and creates an imaginary business. It doesn't even exist. They have no infrastructure to deliver a product. They put the thing out there, they share it as much as they can, and they see if they get hits. And if people send in queries to see if they, if they're ready to sell the product. And if they get a lot of queries, then they develop it. There's a lot of businesses that get started that way.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate test market, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great place to start. Is if you know there's a market, you're probably going to have some degree of success.
Yeah, many people, of course, are afraid of failure, but you think failure is just a part of the foundation to achieving your goals.
Well, I think one of the reasons to be afraid of failure is when you spend all the time on the front end deciding you're going to completely, fully build out your idea before you even present it to the marketplace. If you get to the market early with your idea and try to test the idea to see if it's got legs, you're much less likely to fail. The failure to me comes from, okay, I'm going to spend $100,000 or whatever it is that it takes to kind of build this little business idea. And so you spend all that money before you even know if there's a market. So the point is you could get to the end of building this thing, find out that nobody cares about what you just did. Well, now that money's wasted. But if before you build it, you share your idea and people go, you know, I like that. Rick, that's a great idea. If you changed this, well, that's a great thing to know before you
Right.
actually, you know, it's nice to know that what people want different while you're in the blueprint phase as opposed to the finished product phase. And I think failure becomes much less daunting if you're getting feedback along the way, so you don't go all in. That's a mistake I made a ton of times, is developing something too much before I really had good feedback from people on what they wanted. So I'd already spent a bunch of my money building something that I hadn't even tested in the marketplace.
Well, that's a good lead into what you're currently doing now with Social Jukebox. Tell us how that started and what that software program does.
Okay, well, I started in 2013. I came out with Alphabet Success. So like many authors, I quickly found out that you come out with a new book, and other than, you know, perhaps your parents and very close friends, nobody cares.
Yeah.
So, you know, I needed to try to build an audience. So I got onto social media to do that. And I found the process of repetitively scheduling and managing all my content to just be mind-numbing. So I reached out to the guy that used to be the head of IT for Omega back in the day. Actually, he was the same guy who was the first person I ever worked for when I got out of college. But I reached out to Len and I said, hey, can you build me something that will post to social media so that I can just put all my content that's evergreen into these databases and it'll automatically post on my behalf? And he's like, sure, I can do that. So we built this thing and to promote my book, right? Well, along the way, people were a heck of a lot more interested in the software than they were my book. So being at least a modestly decent entrepreneur, instead of pushing what wasn't working, I said, okay, I'm glad I wrote this book and I hope it helps a few people, but clearly the better business opportunity is the software. And so we first put it out as a free service, and we got several thousand people sign up for it. And then I thought, well, that's nice. It's nice to have people interested in your product. But will anybody pay for the privilege of using it? So we put up a payment gateway, and of the, I don't know, I say like 7,000 or 8,000, whatever it was we had when we launched, of free users, about 550 of those became paid users. And, you know, and it's grown by triple that, over triple that today. So, you know, we continue to grow the paid user base. But it was I mean, to me, it was kind of a good example. I mean, I had a need, you know, and I serviced my own need. And then I just noticed people kept asking me about it. So, I mean, that's kind of like we were just talking about. I mean, it's a great indication this is probably going to work, because people were really curious and seemed anxious to get a chance to try it themselves. So, and the proof's in the pudding. I mean, people continue to be interested in it. And for, you know, a lot of small business people, being able to maintain a social media presence without spending a lot of time at a keyboard is a pretty appealing thing.
Yeah, you have, of course, some competitors out there with like Hootsuite and, a few of these others. What would be the differences between what you're doing, say, what some of the other platforms are?
Well, I mean, the two dominant platforms are Hootsuite and Buffer, but neither one of those is a truly automated system in the sense that you have to. I mean, I was using Hootsuite from the start, and I'm still a customer. I got nothing bad to say about them, but their system is not automated. So you put the content in, and it's like you fill the bucket, but that bucket is leaking out into your social media feed, and then eventually the bucket's empty. So you got to race back, and you got to put some content in, and depending on how much content you have, you've got to remember what you posted, et cetera, et cetera. And then like schedule your next group of posts for whatever platform you're posting on. Whereas with Social Jukebox, you put all your content in, and it's like a giant hourglass. I mean, that content is dripping out into your social media feed, but when the hourglass is empty on one side, the thing flips over and it just starts over again. So you don't need to remember like, oh my gosh, I got to get back to that. And it allows you to do other things too, like you could construct, like we have a Christmas jukebox. If you just wanted posts to go out around the holidays, you could set up a jukebox to post between, say, November 27th and December 24th or 25th, and you could set the jukebox up only to post on those days and whatever schedule you set up. And when that day rolls around, it'll start posting, and when the end date comes along, it'll stop posting. And you just set it up, and it does everything else for you.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I'm not using any management tools, and I'm always feeling like I'm shortchanging myself and not being more efficient. I started looking at Hootsuite, and to be honest with you, when I started looking at the videos to try to figure out how this works, it became a little bit overwhelming. So for someone like me who does not have that technical level of expertise, which I think a lot of us are out there who would love to be able to do more than we're doing. When you talk about filling it up with content, where does that content come from? How is that created, or how is that accessed or gathered to put into the jukebox?
Well, I mean, I think what you could even start out with is, let's say that you've got 50 posts that you've put out on Twitter, okay, just to make it simple. And you can identify 50 posts that you've previously made that you think that somebody in the future would probably be interested in. That they're not time sensitive. It's not the stock market was at X today. That's information that's readily, accessible like through a Google search anyway. So that's a post that's like it's stale in a matter of hours. But if you have a post that's about something more evergreen, you could take those 50 evergreen posts and you could just copy and paste them into a jukebox, which is our way of describing a database within the system. So let's say you've got 50 blog posts or 50 podcasts, and you want to take those, because you've probably got your most recent podcast that you want to promote, but then you've got all your back catalog, all the podcasts that you've done previously. And of course, for your existing audience, that's old news. But like anyone, presumably you're trying to build your audience and add to your audience.
Right.
And even among your existing audience, there may be people that go, oh, I never knew he interviewed so-and-so, because maybe they haven't taken the time to go through your back catalog, et cetera. So by promoting, like say, more heavily promoting a new episode, but then keeping your back catalog flowing out to your social media accounts, this is really helpful, because even though it may seem like old news to you or some of your existing people, I think it's really important to keep your back catalog going out, because that may be the one piece of content that really brings you a solid listener. They may listen to the podcast with me and go, it's okay. But they listened to one from 4 weeks ago. They're like, man, that really hit a sweet spot for me. So that may be the person that brings you an audience member. And so that's how you'd build a jukebox, is by taking your evergreen content. You could start with that, and then and then just build from there. I mean, I'm an advocate for having this kind of content driven, like podcasts or blog posts or YouTube videos or whatever it is, but also having some stuff that may be more entertaining, amusing. I mean, it's one of the reasons I post a lot of quotes, is because this is a really bite-sized piece of content that people will show up for. But because I have a lot of people following me, when I put out a blog post, I do get a lot of reads and I get a lot of, hits that way.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like building that content mix that, you're not necessarily going to draw people in just with your core mission stuff. There, you can have teaser things. I mean, it could be photo of your cat, could be a photo of your dog, and it's also personalizes your account when you put some stuff out that's, more personal, not just the business you're in, whether it's podcasting or blogging or, cooking, whatever it is that you do.
Sure. Well, Tim, look, I know we're getting close to time here, so I want to be sure that we get any final thoughts that you might have. Anything that you'd want to say before we sign off of this episode here?
I'd say more than anything, for anybody that's out there that's been toying around with an idea and so on, is to just go ahead and try to take the most basic elements of it and put it out in front of people, and don't be afraid to share your idea and get people's feedback, because very often people are sitting on great ideas and they're waiting for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. Doesn't exist. You could always use more money, you could always use more time, and you can always find more excuses. The best thing you can do is get the idea out there, and momentum is magical, and as you get feedback, your idea will improve, how you think about it will improve. So don't let yourself be the person that kind of hunkers down and keeps refining and refining. Get out there and embrace the market, because the market is what will ultimately, it's going to be the thing that's going to have to drive your business anyhow. But by reaching into the market, you'll find what you need to do to be successful in it.
Tim Fargo, it's great to have you. Great to listen to you talk about success principles. Man, I hope you come back sometime and share more with us. You can get connected with Tim on Twitter. He's very active on Twitter at Tim_Fargo. Tim Fargo at Tim_Fargo. And be sure and check out socialjukebox.com for content marketing management. And when the show airs, we'll have all of Tim's contacts available, but just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. And no matter what's going on in your life, just remember, share a little love on it. I'm Rick Amitin, and I'll see you next time.